Welcome to Divorcing Strong, the podcast that pulls no punches when it comes to divorce. I'm Becky Sampson, better known as Bulldog Becky Brockovich, and I'm here to give you the straight talk, the strategies, and the subpoena secrets you won't hear anywhere else. With expert guests and proven advice, you'll learn your rights, your options, and gain your power that encourages a fair and equitable outcome. Divorce doesn't have to break you. It can build you. Let's get to it. In every divorce, there's what's said, and then there's what's hidden. So today's guest has made his mission to uncover the truth that others try to bury. So as a co-founder of Spear Investigations, Mike Seeley brings clarity where there's confusion, helping people find the answers and can change everything. With years of experience in legal and investigative world, he knows how to follow the trail, connect the dots, and reveal what lies beneath the surface. For anyone walking through the fog of divorce, wondering what's real and what's not, this conversation is your reminder that the truth can be found, and sometimes it's closer than you think. So welcome, Mike, to the show.
Thank you for that great introduction. I appreciate it. I hope I can live up to all that.
I know. I always
pretty high praise. Thank you.
I always laugh when my intros I'm like, did I really go through all of that?
Wow, that's amazing. Who is this? Oh, it's me. Oh, okay, cool. Thanks. Thank you so much.
I know, but I just want to welcome you and thank you for taking the time to be on the podcast today, because sure. I wanted to bring you on because you have very unique work that you do. And I often say to people going through divorce that just because people are trying to hide information or assets or any of that kind of stuff doesn't mean that it's actually hidden. So before we really dive into that kind of stuff, tell people kind of where you came from, how you got into this industry, what makes you passionate about, what you do, because I'd love to hear it.
Sure, I appreciate it. My background is very diverse. I was in medical sales for many years. Sold spinal implants, pain pumps, orthobiologics. Did that for about 20 years. I was recruited into a legal funding startup that was kind of trying to go national. They were kind of a regional brand. I didn't know anything about the legal business, but I was interested in the opportunity. So I came in and started, learning about the legal process and how things worked, and realized that, hey, these lawyer jokes that you hear all the time aren't really doing people justice. These people are attorneys they're great people. They fight really hard for their clients, and they really care. It was a message that I really felt like I could get behind. I enjoy that work. I enjoy standing up for, kind of the little guy. And with the product and services that my company provides helps attorneys win, strengthens their cases. And that's something that I can be proud of when I lay my head on my pillow at night. So I really enjoy it.
Yeah. And I know one of the specialties that you guys do is really employment, like past employment. You work with a lot of attorneys that way.
We do.
And when you and I spoke before, I love first of all, I love that you're an advocate. You have to have the heart. I have found that people that are in the divorce space have a heart to help because it's a really difficult time for people. And especially when they don't know what they don't know. And I do want to be able to give resources to people to say, look, there are ways of finding information, even though you think that it's untouchable. So talk a little bit about
some of these people are at the lowest part of their lives. That's when you feel like, hey, we can come in and, bring some resources to bear to help with the process.
And what kind of
hopefully help the good guys win.
You're absolutely right. I mean, I think when they're going through divorce, you kind of are in this moment of freeze, like, oh my gosh, I was so comfortable all those years, or maybe not, but I was comfortable in the information that I have. And now there's a big fat wall and I can't get the information that I need. So tell people about the services that you do provide for people. Like, where would you start with somebody if they came to you in a situation where they were going through divorce?
We work strictly on the plaintiff side. So I do a lot of civil stuff. I do a lot of premise liability. I do a lot of trucking cases, a lot of things where we find former employees that can be turned into insiders that can be used. They use that information to gain insight into, company policies and procedures, company culture, training, safety issues. So I do a lot of that. But outside of that, I think is probably where I would have the most impact for divorce attorneys or in the divorce side. A couple of those products are we do corporate structure research. So a lot of times when you're a corporation, if somebody's trying to, like you said earlier in the intro, maybe hide assets or the process is just confusing. Somebody may own several businesses. Those businesses are tied to multiple LLCs. We go in and we break those kind of companies apart by partnerships and LLCs to identify possible recoverable assets, which can include property, buildings, real estate holdings, anything excluding bank accounts. We can't get into bank accounts without a subpoena. That's illegal.
That's where I come in, right? Subpoenas. People don't, I just got a call with.
I threw that out for you. That's a softball.
Yeah, I know. I was like, but he was like, I had to research what a subpoena is. A court order, you have to provide the documents. Right. But in your case, so when you're going and looking for things,
so looking for doing the corporate research, individual, what we call a targeted individual deep dive. We can get pretty deep into somebody's electronic footprint. Any public searches of, major searches of public records. Anything they've ever published, social media accounts, your electronic pay services, your Venmos, your PayPal, your Zelle. We have some access to those as far as not necessarily tracking transactions, but looking to see what those accounts are, identifying them, and how they tie into people's emails and accounts.
Okay, so let me kind of
go ahead, sorry.
Oh, sorry. Let me kind of back up on that because people through divorce, especially if they're watching right now, oftentimes, especially, let me just say it's typically the women. It's not always the case, but the women, have raised the kids. They don't know their husband's an entrepreneur. They have a business or a couple businesses. Right. I love that you say that, look, we can go in there and tell you exactly what the corporate structure is. Sure. Obviously they can subpoena the records, the bank records and things like that they want to do that, but also that you can look at the footprint of social media. People often feel like they don't have access to that. And I know in 2 of the states, in North Carolina and South Carolina, if you're even caught talking to somebody of the opposite sex before your divorce is over, then you'll get, there are case studies that show that they get 0. So, I mean, people may be interested in going into, and that's not the case everywhere, but those are the 2 states that I've found.
And we tell people too, like, hey, if anything that's ever on the internet is there forever, that's really the case. It doesn't matter if it's erased or, they take something down, a post, or somebody tags them in something that, that might be questionable. It's there forever. You can't get rid of it. We find, so that's kind of the 4th thing we do is we do a social media collection, data collection in a court admissible format. So we don't, when all these posts are posted, it leaves behind an electronic fingerprint. So when we gather that information from you, it's different than a screenshot. So, you can hold up your phone in court and say, oh, here's a picture right here. Well, that could be overturned because it could be faked. What we provide is something that's the truth. This is something that can't be faked.
Court ready.
Not to my knowledge, at least. It can't be faked, and it's ready to go. And it can be quite extensive as well. So, I mean,
you're saying it's exhibit ready, which means like whether they're representing themselves or they're with an attorney, this is hardcore evidence that you can put in as an exhibit into the court.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. It's less likely to be challenged. It's not like, oh, I've got a picture that I took of my friend's phone. That's a little different than something that has a date stamp on it and a code of when it came from and when it was taken. And that's a little more concrete and a little harder to get rid of. And these depending on somebody's social media profile and how proficient they are in it, it can be extensive. I did a civil case about a month ago that involved a physician in Los Angeles. And when I returned it to the attorney, it was such a big file, I had to send it to him in a zip drive. It was about 234 pages long. So it was just a giant stack of, and he had a presence across multiple social media, formats, and different names and different businesses under different ones. He had 3 or 4 Instagram accounts. He had Snapchat. He had a WhatsApp. I mean, it was pretty good. So
how do you? This is just a personal question, but how do you feel when you get that information and are able to hand it over to an attorney that's got a case against?
It feels really good, because and a lot of times we don't know the whole process, so we don't know what they're looking for. We just kind of give them everything that we do is kind of a custom one-off. It's not like, oh, we check this box, and that box, and then that's it. They come to us and they tell us, hey, this is what we're looking for. So we can go as deep as you want, or they can say, hey, I've got a budget of X. What can we do for that? So we kind of create each search to their, specifically for them, and just do a one-off and get them what they need.
Yeah, I love that you can have that resource. I was saying before we started the show that, my second divorce was really, it was pretty difficult. Let's just say that. Sure. It was pretty heavy. And during all those subpoenas that I ended up doing, I uncovered 5 different felonies. And with all the evidence that I had for that, and I will say that, I had to pick and choose my battles, because you could really go deep and just go down those rabbit holes. And then, next thing I know, my life is kind of on hold, going down those kind of things. However, it is being strategic about what information that you need versus what is just, information that would be nice to know. Because it's really, for some people that have been in a very abusive marriage, or maybe had information withheld from them, or finances, or it can be quite alarming when you start opening up that package and start connecting the dots.
And going, yes, wow, absolutely.
I had no idea.
And that's why, as part of, what we do is, it is kind of personalized, and it is a person, it's not just now we do corporate stuff too, but things like this are very, I think it's important. It's important for the people that are going through this. It's important for their legal representatives to have this information, ready. These are also tools that can be used to help win a negotiation. Somebody may not want something brought to the light in public, or to their maybe co-owners of a company. Things that would paint them in an unflattering light. So I feel like we do it for the right reasons. It's a good feeling. I've said that before, but it really is. It's a good feeling to, I'd like to get more feedback from the attorneys on how exactly it happened, but a lot of times we don't get that. We get it's like we go out and have this great, amazing first date, and we don't ever hear what happened after.
By the way, Mike, I feel the same way with subpoenas, right? Because
this is so juicy. Why can't you tell me what happened? Why can't you tell me what happened? I want to know the details.
Yeah, you're like, I know.
And a lot of times it's a settlement and they can't. But sometimes I'll see something on LinkedIn and they'll talk about a case or a judgment that they got, and I'm like, you helped on that. I remember that now. That feels pretty good.
No, I feel the same exact way. I mean, when people send me a subpoena, I know very little about the case. I just do my subpoena works, compliance, send it back to them. And I'm like, okay, so what happened? Did you get the information? Like, how was it? Did you make the argument? And they don't often have the time to do that. However, I don't know if you feel the same way too, but in a sense, it feels nice that I don't have to get involved with all the nitty gritty.
Well, it's true of it too. What we run across is I hear a horrific story about once a week. Something really bad. I do a lot of, major injury cases. So those are usually what I'm associated with, that I hear a terrible story about, a really bad trucking accident, or a product that malfunctioned, that hurts somebody, or, something unspeakable that I've never heard of before happens, every week. So, that's why I really try to, fight the good fight and help out these people that are, that are injured or hurt, and, make major companies and insurance providers, stand up to, do the right thing.
Yeah, and you brought up a really good point too, that sometimes you get this information as a point of negotiation. And I always believe in a negotiation, you need to know what is important to the other person. And sometimes having this information, even though it never goes to trial, or even though it may not get exposed publicly, the fact that they know that you have that information allows you the opportunity to have a greater, stronger negotiation tactic. And because it's in both of my cases that was kind of the situation. It helped us settle, and that's really what we want to do, is to be able to settle. But can you
people at this point are trying to move on with their lives, and fold this up and put this on a shelf somewhere and be done with it and move on to the next step. I mean, I know I went through a divorce, and it was after 19 years, and it was something very similar to me. So sorry, I've got a Great Dane over here that's asleep on the floor, and she's having a dream. So if you hear anything, everything's okay. But she's decided to have a dream here, and she's a pretty big lady. She's about 180 pounds. So she makes a little bit of noise. I apologize.
That's okay. Talk a little bit too about what the difference is. I know you're not a PI, a private investigator.
Right.
But talk about the difference between a private investigator. When would they need a private investigator versus when they use your services?
That's great. So what we do is we say that we are we do digital investigations, right? So there's no boots on the ground. There's no physical surveillance. Nobody is, when people think of PIs, they think of somebody eating, cold donuts and drinking stale coffee and taking pictures of people sneaking around. We don't do that. We search, through huge amounts of public records, things that you could probably ultimately find 75% of on your own. But it's just a task that most people don't want to take on. It's too daunting. We're members of different platforms that allow us to use other resources that aren't available to the public to scan these public records. We contract with private investigators. I am not a private investigator, like you said. We contract with licensed private investigators across the country to provide these services. They are the experts, and we own, for better or for worse, we own the relationships with the attorneys. We go to lots of legal meetings, and we're growing the business and marketing, and basically we're wholesaling their services up to a certain point. We offer interviewing services, so if somebody wants some questions answered, we can do that as well too. Work with the attorney to put together a list of questions that they want, worked up, and we're able to make those calls and get people talking about things to provide some context and some background information.
Nice.
Another thing we do too is we also find people. So somebody will come to us and say, "Hey, I'm in Texas and I'm looking for somebody in North Dakota, and I have no idea how to find them." This is all the information that they have. They have maybe a former address where they were in Texas, maybe a company that they work for. We're able to, with our resources, go through and find these people, name, address, and usually a verified contact information as well. So those are kind of some of the kind of individual, kind of one-off things here.
That's really important, Mike, because you just actually made me think for custody cases, right, where they need to be able to find the other spouse. Also, if you're trying to give divorce papers and you don't know where your spouse is, to be able to, actually locate them, to be able to serve them. Other organizations or people that you need to have subpoenaed to come testify for you. That
Absolutely.
would be
I work with a lot of attorneys that are around the country that are like, "Hey, we had this individual served at this location. They weren't there. The address is no good. We're kind of at a dead end. Can you find them?" And I can say, now we don't guarantee the searches, but I would say in 3 years, there's probably been 3 or 4 people that we couldn't find. So
Mm.
very, very, very successful with the searches and narrowing it down. Funny story. This is my podcast story right here. We found somebody 2 or 3 months ago that had fled to Mexico. He was in a jungle village in interior Mexico with no running water, no electricity, and no cell phone service. And we found him in about a week. And when I sent it was a brand new attorney that has never used this before. And when I sent him the information about where this gentleman lived, he called me and said, "Hey, what's this guy's address?" And I was like, "Hey, there's no address. It's a description of where he lives."
Yeah.
Like,
here's a pin on the map.
Yeah, like I was told, if you write this description on the envelope and put the proper amount of postage on it, it will eventually show up there. And that's what he did. So I was like, this is going to be a great podcast story.
I know.
So we do find people as well.
So that is so. First of all, okay, and I kind of mentioned this to you before the show too, is that when I went through my divorce and found all of that felony stuff and went down all those rabbit holes, I literally considered looking into PI work, private investigator work, because it is so fascinating to people that are into that kind of stuff to know that we have those tools and abilities. Like, it's also scary, right? We can't go anywhere without being tracked.
The licensing requirements are pretty big. It takes a lot to get your private investigator license. Kind of a mentor program, and there's a lot of online credits. I guess you can go to a classroom too. But it's extensive for sure.
Well,
they don't just give it to you. You don't just pay $25 and the plastic badge shows up in the mail. It's a little more expensive than that. So I have a lot of respect for what these guys actually do.
I know. Well, and the thing is that I really appreciate the fact that you can tell us what is possible. And that's one thing I find out with people going through divorce, that they don't know what's possible. Like oftentimes I tell them about subpoenas and they're like, "Oh, I can do that." And I'm like, yes, you can absolutely subpoena things. Now, I don't always recommend that they do that right out the gate, because it's kind of a more of aggressive move, and probably the same thing with yours, right? They're going to be like, "Wow, where did you get all that information?" But when you're in a situation where
I wouldn't want to scare somebody off, or have somebody shut down, or hey, you send me a letter from your attorney that says this, and then I'll automatically throw up my defenses, and then I send you back a letter that looks like this. And it can get very adversarial very quickly.
Yes. And so I always say, look, stay as peaceful as you possibly can, and ask for what you need. And once you've asked for it, gone through the due diligence and the good faith effort, and then they don't provide that, then these tools are very powerful tools for you to be able to gather the information that you need. Because it's in social media, and you and I will probably have to talk offline, but about how we can collaborate too with that, because people with subpoenas, like those 2 attorneys that I talked to in Northern and Southern Cal, it's like, you just need to Snapchat and Instagram and all of those, but you're saying that you can get the information without a subpoena. Is that what you're saying?
That's right. Yes. Yeah. Now, I haven't done any. I will say this: we don't do near as many divorce kind of proceedings as I do civil litigation. So I would probably need to just double check on that for you. I don't want to say something that's incorrect, because a lot of stuff that we're doing kind of pre-discovery and trials. So there's no issue with us talking to them. And that's another thing that we do. We always want to make sure that we are staying within the guardrails that the attorney and the legal system puts up for us. We don't want to do anything to damage the case in any way, or any of the relationship, or get ourselves in trouble. So we always want to be really clear and deliberate about how we handle our business.
Okay, so I'm glad that you said that. So I was going to say, do you mainly work with attorneys and underneath the attorney legal system, or can you work directly with somebody, even if they're pro se, and they can call and get your services?
Yeah, we work mainly with attorneys, just because that's kind of the nature of our business. If there was an opportunity for somebody that wanted to reach out that was saying, hey, I need X or I need Y, we could look at that on an individual basis. Is what Bill would be my best answer.
Okay, awesome.
Just because the people that we work with, the people that we contract with, they ask, hey, is this a pending case? Is there pending litigation? Like, I can't look up like, hey, I wonder what my little high school girlfriend's up to, and like have them like search for her. That's not something that I'm doing, or somebody that I'm possibly thinking about doing something with business wise. I don't ever abuse that kind of a relationship. So I would offer somebody else the same kind of advice.
You don't do the pre-marriage stuff, right? Like, I'm dating and I want to look up this person that I'm dating.
Right. Right. So leave that up to your besties. Let them get in there, be their your best social media justice warriors. So for you on your behalf, that's 100% for them. But if you need something a little bit more robust than your best friend looking into things, that's when you want to pick up the phone and give us a call.
Awesome. Well, more on a more kind of just as we're finishing up and stuff like that, just more on of a personal level,
Sure.
Since you have been through a divorce, what kind of advice would you give people that are just starting the process or maybe in the process of getting divorced, having been through one yourself?
Sure. And I'm going to give this from the guy's perspective, right? I know what my journey was, and I know it's different for each individual person, but I always felt like, the men don't take care of each other, right? You lose your kind of couple my when you go through a divorce, and there's a lot of isolated time. So I always felt like I was going to reach out to, my fellow guys and, kind of try to lift them up through that dark time. Try to tell them, hey, this is gonna get better. You're not. This is gonna feel really, really, really weird for a year or so. Then you're gonna come out of the other side of this, and you're gonna be normal again. But right now, everything's kind of been turned upside down. That's probably the first thing that I do. The second thing that I do is for people that have had kids. I always try to go high when somebody went low. I mean, there's a lot of times during this thing where can be pretty nasty. And, my kids were middle school and high school age. And I always wanted to, I'm like, hey, I'm going to go through and do whatever's best for the kids over and over and over. Even if it might not be the best thing for me at the time, it might be hurtful for me. But I was like, eventually this is going to pay off because I'm going to be able to go to my daughter's wedding and sit in the same room with my ex-wife and her not be uncomfortable to the point where she's like, I can't even stand to be around you. Yeah. And we have a very amicable relationship now. We, cross over a few times, here and there around the year, and it paid off in the long run. I could be very nasty about it, or I could just keep going, just keep staying high, and that's what I did, and it worked for me, and I feel at peace with myself. It made me a better man in the long run, and I ended up with a very beautiful woman. I have a great relationship with.
Yeah.
What's that?
I said, and a great father.
I have a great, solid relationship with. Yeah, I have a great, solid relationship with both of my kids. They're adults now. My daughter's 28 or 29, and my son's 24. And they're great, well-adjusted adults. And we just wrapped our arms around them and loved them in our own separate ways. And it worked out for us. So, but I really believe it was, the process of, hey, I want to always just try to do the right thing for them over and over and over. Even if it hurts me in private, I'm going to keep doing it that way because I know it's going to pay off in the long run. And it's been about, I guess it's been 10 years now. So it paid off.
Yeah. Well, so you brought up some good points that we like to talk about on this show is that number one, get a support group, right? Like you like to support and give hope to these men that are friends of yours that might be going through it, or maybe you had people do that for you and you were going through it. And secondly, keeping it the forefront of your mind.
Nobody did it for me, by the way. Nobody did it for me, by the way.
The what?
Nobody did it for me. So I was like, nobody did it for me. So I was like, I'm going to change this. I'm going to change this, and I'm going to reach out to people, whatever, even if they're like kind of just general acquaintances. guy across the street from me got a
Yeah.
divorce, and I was like, hey man, I know we're not like the best of friends, but if you ever need somebody just to talk to about this stuff, it's not your like best friend. Maybe some of this is embarrassing. You don't want to talk about it. Sometimes it's easier to talk to somebody that you don't know about this stuff. Talking about it makes it a heck of a lot better than just trying to swallow it down and keep it down all the time.
Yeah, and I have to say, men, there's not a lot of support for men, and you're right. They do tend to isolate themselves. And I know my now husband, he's an amazing man, reaches out and talks to people in our community that are going through it as well. Because once you've been through it, you know it. You know what you know, right? Like, you know how it feels, and to be
Yeah,
able
I mean,
to
it's
support.
yeah, I mean, it's everything's just turned upside down, and even if you kind of wanted it, it's different. You people that were your in-laws and your kind of extended family on the your spouse's side of the family. Those relationships change. I've got 3 nieces on my ex-wife's side of the family that I adore. But I don't have a strong relationship with them anymore. I saw them at my daughter's engagement party for the first time in probably 4 or 5 years, and I was just almost, they're like, Uncle Mike, Uncle Mike. They're so happy to see me and so kind. And, I try to watch from afar without being, too invasive or creepy or anything like that. But I watch these girls grow up. I love them, So.
Yeah, and trust that process, because I love that you saw the bigger game, right? That you were going to make the right decisions, even though it was tough at the time. And I say this all the time, that divorce is temporary. It's not a permanent state. It may feel like it at the time, but you are going to come through it. And depending on what you do during that process and preparing yourself and your actions, especially when you have kids, because you're never going to fully be separated from that person when you're sharing those children, and the children need that modeled, as an adult, that, hey, I'm going to rise above all the conflict and make better choices so that I can help my kids navigate it through it.
Right.
Because you're not the only one that's affected, obviously, through the
I mean, yeah, because for them, they're kind of the world is turned upside down, and they don't kind of know where they stand, and just to keep things moving forward and having these regular relationships. Being a dad was the greatest joy of my life. And then that kind of changed all of a sudden, and that was pretty rough. It was pretty rough to go through that, and but again, things get better. They grow up. You get to be where you get to be smart again. Kids don't think you're that smart, and then all of a sudden they become young adults, and you're like, oh, you know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
about some of this stuff. So that's kind of nice to experience too.
And you got to find the love of your life. I always like to tell people, look, there is life after divorce, and you can have a great relationship. It just doesn't feel like it at the time. So,
yeah, of course, for sure.
Well, thank you, Mike, so much for taking the time today. Tell everybody kind of where, I know in the show notes, we're going to have your contact information, but where would they find you if they wanted to reach out to you? What's the best ways?
Sure. I'm on LinkedIn, Mike Seeley at Spear Investigations. I've got a webpage. It's spearinvestigations.com. My contact information is on there. Pick up the phone, call me, send me an email, connect with me on LinkedIn if you want. I do a lot of business to business kind of marketing and growing my brand on LinkedIn. So I'm on there quite a bit. That's kind of where you can find us. We do a little bit of stuff on Instagram, not much. That's usually kind of the fun stuff that we do, kind of the relationship building. But those are the primary places to be. And or I guess an email. It's mseely, SEELY at spearinvestigations with an S on the end.com. You can email me there too.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it. And I'm going to keep you in my back pocket. Because you never know.
You should call me whenever you got that giant stack of subpoenas. You need to find people.
I know.
Absolutely.
I know. It's
I appreciate it. Thank you for letting me stretch my my brand a little bit, and get outside of my kind of comfort zone and do something a little bit different. I really appreciate it. I was excited to be on the show, and it certainly was a good experience.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time, and thank you for doing what you do. I always love to thank my guests, and also when I'm hosting, because all of this work can get heavy at times, and it's usually because there's some kind of conflict out there. So thank you for doing what you do. Thank you for supporting the people that you support, and thank you for sharing some of your personal story about your own divorce and giving people hope that there really is life after divorce. So.
Sure.
So thanks everybody for checking in with us today for another episode of Divorcing Strong. I've been your host, Becky Sampson, and interviewing Mike Seeley. So check in with us next week. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks. Thanks for listening to the Divorcing Strong podcast. This episode is sponsored by Only Subpoenas, where we make subpoenas simple, powerful, and 100% compliant. If you're having a hard time getting the information you need to settle for a fair and equitable divorce, let us help you. Whether you're an attorney or you're navigating divorce on your own, subpoenas can uncover the truth, secure the evidence you need, and level the playing field. To see how we can help, book an appointment by visiting our website at onlysubpoenas.com.